Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, the Wise Guy, and today is January 6th, 2025. It was just dropped that in a short time we expect the Canadian Prime Minister to resign as the leader of the ruling Liberal Party. This comes at the same day that Congress is to certify the nomination of Donald Trump as the next President of the United States. So if you enjoy news, history, or general Americana, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It's good to have you here. I'd be much obliged. Sit a spell. Take your shoes off. After leading the party for 11 years and serving as Prime Minister for 9, Justin Trudeau of Canada is expected to resign his position today. Although, until a new leader is chosen, he will remain in office to steer the ship until that point. A general election is supposed to be held later in this year, but Trudeau is seeing the writing on the wall and choosing to step down before he's being voted out. He has recently seen a set of challenges to his leadership, including calls for him to resign by even members of his own party, as well as clearly negative opinion polls. On top of all that, he was also facing the incoming trade war as dictated by the incoming president across their southern border. National polling has the leading party falling well behind the Conservatives in a major opinion poll, and some of them have polls of upwards of 20% or more in losses. Meanwhile, today is January 6th, after a general election in the United States, which means that today will be the day that the votes are counted and certified in the House of Representatives. Some of you may recall the difficulties in the previous transition as MAGA supporters violently stormed the Capitol like little whiny diaper babies when they didn't get the results that they wanted. And, throughout their constant desires to try and create a false equivalency, many online are hoping that Democrats and progressives will do the same, or worse, so their movement doesn't appear as petulant as it actually is. Take notes, Republicans, because I'm under the impression that you are actually going to see how this process is supposed to go as far as demands for civility and decorum are concerned. Although it is still early. Maybe our half-naked bison horn man is out there right now just waiting to force his way onto the House floor, and maybe throngs of our own feces-wielding crowds are just giddy to beat up cops and turn today into anarchy and idiocy. I wait with bated breath. You see, Republicans, there is a way for these proceedings to occur, regardless of the results. When a society changes its leaders, it's expected that the losing side takes the L and moves on with maturity and grace. Hopefully today you will all get an exemplified version of that. I know so many of you wish to have this same side's argument with this whole thing because it makes your own shitty behavior and thought processes feel a little better. I mean, what is suffering without friends? Am I right? And today, we see again how this false equivalence is on full display. Also, to those who are tired of hearing it, you are one of the few people who still refuses to gather the significance of that day. It will undoubtedly be recalled and contrasted against when people wish to show what not to do in a modern democracy. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there will be protests. Electing a criminal over a prosecutor is a shot across the bow of every American with critical thought and decency in this world, and so many of you were too quick to hit the fire button without considering the consequences. So let's go over some of them, shall we? Trump and Mike Johnson have officially come out to say that his first 100 days isn't going to be filled with the promises kept. In fact, he's now pushing it back to Memorial Day, wherein they're expected to pass, quote, most of Trump's agenda with one big, beautiful bill. So you heard it from him. President Trump and Mike Johnson have moved their goalpost yet again and promised to deliver some huge reconciliation package before Memorial Day. Keep in mind, this is a Congress that almost fell on its face during a vote for a continuing resolution, a fairly straightforward process. But reconciliation bills are different, as they do not require a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. They can actually get away with a simple majority. Johnson also mentioned that Trump wanted to raise or completely eliminate the debt ceiling before June, which is funny because these are the same people who all but refused that the last time the debt ceiling was even discussed. In 2023, Republicans refused to touch the debt ceiling so as to avoid creating the impression that Joe Biden or the Democrats in the Senate were actually able to get anything accomplished and anything meaningful done as far as legislation is concerned. In fact, less than 2 years ago, Republicans were talking about the need to lower the debt. The White House at the time was telling them that they needed to actually raise the debt ceiling with no conditions. This was actually threatening a large number of important benefits, including Social Security and military funding, to larger issues like interest rates and recession. Keep in mind, regardless of the political jockeying that was performed when Republicans went out of their way to let the government stumble consistently through budgetary crises throughout the entirety of their tenure, they're all now but giddy to actually get rid of it entirely so as to fund the extraordinarily high price of Trump's demands. They're able to do this because they're able to manipulate and exploit their base, again, into misunderstanding basic principles such as debt and deficits. Debt is the amount of money that our government owes, and deficit is the money spent that cannot be afforded. A deficit is a yearly figure based upon a difference between what is made and what had to be allocated for government budgets. Here's an example. If the government spends $4 trillion in a year, but only collects $3 trillion in taxes, it has $1 trillion in deficit that year. However, if the government continues to run deficits year after year after year, the cumulative total of those deficits becomes a part of that national debt. If a government can increase its revenue and GDP, which is what we did under Biden, the deficit is reduced, while the debt can still increase by other means. When Trump was in office his first term, he increased the deficits with his tax cuts for the wealthy, which in turn added significantly more to the national debt over the long run than Biden during his term in office. Failing to raise the debt ceiling only made it clear that Republicans couldn't pay the bills while adding more to the national deficit. They thought that they could fool enough Americans into believing that Biden, the man who pleaded with them to unconditionally raise the debt ceiling, was responsible for their refusal to do their jobs. Clearly, it worked because the moms that were able to take their daughters to Taylor Swift concerts and complain about grocery prices were also the folks who went to the voting booth and asked for the fox to watch over the henhouse. This is going to be a fascinating 2 years at least, and 4 if those who failed to learn their lesson the first few dozen times with this con man continue to do so. Remember the goals: reconciliation of Trump's agenda by Memorial Day. Keep them honest. You want my assessment? That reconciliation bill is going to cut every single program that the majority of Republican and MAGA voters depend on, like welfare, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Hell, that prancing dipshit even called for cutting veterans' benefits and cancer treatment for children. You get what you pay for, Republicans. I certainly will be trying to get more to better serve by bringing you updates from the inevitable protests if I get an opportunity, and the response to the protests as well. This next 4 years are going to be rough, and my heart truly does go out to the Liberals in Canada because our own progressive movements here also hang in a balance. So just stick in there with me because I will try to shine a spotlight on the inconsistencies and inhumanities every step of the way. That way I can do my part here to help you all stay informed, stay engaged, and stay decent. Until next time. Y'all come back now. You hear?